Sister Norma Pimentel is the executive director of the Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley and one of the most well-known migrant advocates in that region, receiving praise from Pope Francis and many others for her work. In 2020, she was included on Time's list of the 100 most influential people in the world. Sister Pimentel helps run humanitarian respite centers and faith-based shelters like Reynosa's Senda de Vida on both sides of the United States southern border, caring for thousands of people. Many are migrants who are waiting in Reynosa for the Title 42 to be lifted. The pandemic public health order has been in place since March of 2020 and allows the United States to send immigrants, including those seeking asylum, to Mexico or back to their home countries instead of allowing them entry into the United States while their immigration case is processed. Sister Pimentel joins me to give a firsthand account of the situation at the border and what she wants people to understand about Title 42. Thank you very much for joining me today, Sister Pimentel.
Thank you, Brad.
I really appreciate your time. Now, Title 42 is very controversial.
You know, Brad, evidently it's a very political issue. And so, unfortunately, Title 42 is a policy that is in place to hold people from entering the country. And they use the pandemic as the reason how they do this. And so I think what we need is to look at policies that allow people to enter the United States properly, legally, safely, and orderly. And unfortunately, focusing on Title 42 is not going to be the response, but rather the need is to put policies in place that truly address what the need is at the border.
As immigration advocates, what can we say to the people who don't want immigration, keep Title 42, close the borders? What policies can we say that we can give to them to allow a more orderly, humane process?
You know, Title 42 does not address the reality that we face at the border. It simply puts a hold on people entering the country. But we need policies that really are defined to address what we see at the border. We have to control who enters our country, but we also need to provide a pathway, a safe, orderly entrance into our country through immigration policies that respond to what we're seeing here at the border. A policy that will allow people that are fleeing violence, that are persecuted, that are afraid, they're fearful for their lives, for their children, and all we're doing is holding them in Mexico in the other side of the border. And that does not address the issue. It puts a lot of burden on so many of our local border towns on both sides of the border, and it really puts families in total harm's way. They are suffering, they're hurting, they need to be responded to care because there's no policy in place to allow them to enter the United States safely and correctly and orderly through those points of entry, through our international bridges where agents are prepared to process and control and understand who's entering our country, and being able to allow those that have a legitimate claim for fear for their lives to enter the United States and continue that legal proceedings, and those that are not, then they are not allowed to enter the United States. They're sent back to their country or whatever. I mean, we're talking about children and mothers and families that are not criminals. They're here because of a reality they're facing, and we're keeping them in harm's way, and that is not right.
So let's go back. You live right there on the border in the Rio Grande Valley. You've lived there your whole entire life. What is the general attitude of the people who live on the border towns? Are they generally receptive to immigrants? Are they saying close the borders?
Well, the people at the border, I see a great support to our response, humanitarian response, because we see the fact that there are people who are hurting and we need to respond with care. For the most part, what we see at the border, really, we are a very safe community, and it's not like it's out of control and there's immigrants and refugees and violence going around in our communities. I mean, our law enforcement will speak clearly as how these communities are some of the safest communities in the United States.
So you're a U.S. citizen. You were born in the United States.
Yes, but I would have been very possible to be born in Mexico. My parents are from Mexico.
And you have brothers and sisters?
I do, and they all live in the U.S. side. They were all born in the U.S.
They were all born in the U.S. Okay, good. And when did you realize that immigration was your calling within the Catholic Church?
Immigrants were coming to our community and being dropped off in great numbers at the bus station. So our community was already urgently wanting to get involved and respond to care for the families. And so together we were able to put together a response that was very urgently needed here in our community to make sure that these families who were given permission to remain in the United States and proceed to their final destination, they immediately needed urgent care. And so the community did that. Everybody, not just the Catholics, every single faith denomination joined with me in making sure we were present to these families.
How is the situation completely changed now?
Now, if you wanted asylum in the United States, you were forced to remain in Mexico. You were forced to remain in Mexico because of the pandemic. And so all these policies forced people to be in the Mexican side of the border, And so I needed to make sure that we could be present as well to these families that were forced to remain in Mexico and in conditions that were heartbreaking, and we needed to see what could be our part in assisting these families with the bare things that anyone needs, like food and just presence of the fact that they matter, they're people, they're human beings, and we needed to be there with them as well, just to accompany them.
What do you think of President Biden? He was campaigning and he's saying, on day one, he's going to end Title 42. And then he comes into office and Title 42 continues for almost 15 or 16 months until April of 2022 before he decided to end it. And then he ends it knowing that he didn't, I could be wrong, but I believe he knew he wasn't following the right procedures to end the regulation. He had to have known there was going to be a lawsuit and it was going to be blocked. Do you have criticism for that?
I think any administration should try to find a solution and not hold on to a pandemic to try to use that as a way to hold people back, but rather create the right policies. And I don't see any administration doing that, including the Biden administration.
What do you say to the pundits, the Republicans, and even some Democrats who say we can't lift Title 42? If we do, we're going to be overwhelmed with immigrants, a surge at the border. It's going to be chaos.
It's just not a matter whether, it's not good to take Title 42 off because this is going to happen. Well, then why don't you have a policy that addresses it correctly?
I agree with you. First of all, I think they need thousands of immigration judges right at the border.
There has to be many options that can be considered, but definitely no action is not an option, and there needs to be something done correctly and quickly. Our immigration policies are failure. We simply used it as a form to hold back and to react to a reality at the border instead of addressing really a proper process to look at immigration and why people are at our borders,
How many migrants do you think are right now waiting in Reynosa, which is across the border from where you are right now, for asylum to come to the United States?
I would estimate between 6,000 and 8,000 maybe.
And how many people can Senda de Vida, your shelter in Reynosa, hold?
Yeah, well, the shelter of Senda de Vida is overseen by Pastor Hector Silva. And we recently just, together with him and joined many others, to set up another shelter we call Senda de Vida Dos. Senda de Vida actually can respond to almost 1,500 people. And Senda de Vida Dos has the capacity to respond to 3,000 or more people. And so in addition to those two shelters, there's others as well in Reynosa and also in other cities as well. But in Reynosa itself, most people are being able to be at a shelter instead of become homeless. And we're trying to avoid people to be homeless in the streets and exposed to more dangers and needs. And so the joint effort of so many is helping families, immigrants and refugees that are there be in a shelter where they're cared for and make sure they're safe.
What kind of assistance do you give in the shelter?
Pastor Hector, he has been able to establish a way to work with the immigrants so that they can participate in the operation of a shelter that responds correctly to provide the basic things they need, which is a space where they can rest, a space where they can eat, a space where they can have attorneys come and see if they can have their process into the United States looked at, and so I think that it takes a lot of goodwill people and agencies to step in and try to see how they can help. And it's not just one, we all have to come together. It's just like in McAllen and in the Rio Grande Valley, we work together with the city officials, with Border Patrol. The same thing happens in Reynosa in Mexico. We have to work with the city government, with local immigration offices, and with other NGOs and people who are pastors who are joining together in responding to what we've seen here in our communities.
Are the migrants who are coming, are they given an opportunity to work in the shelter, work for the shelter?
The actual response of the the immigrants themselves to be part of building and taking care of the new shelter. And really, it was through their hands, and they're getting up very early in the morning at 5 to go and enjoy 100 of them every single day. So they build the walls, they build the kitchen, they build the restrooms, and the women cook and care for all of them, and making sure that the center operates nice, and I think that's important.
What are the things that you're hearing why people are coming to the border, willing to live on the Mexican side, to seek asylum into the United States?
The stories they share with me is how terrible things are back home, especially if you speak to Haitians, which is a great number of people from Haiti are coming to the southern border. And their stories are about how terrible life is in Haiti, and the fact that the violence of the gangs there are the worst ever in any place. And so they know that going back to Haiti is going to be not something they would want to do. And so because of the pandemic, they travel north because the pandemic, they found that they could no longer work. So they move forward and hopeful that maybe in the United States they will be safe. And that's why we see them at the border. And many other countries as well, their stories are about fear for their lives, fear of their child being taken at a certain age. And so they're afraid. They're afraid for their children. And so those are the stories I hear constantly from mothers. And you can just see it in their faces, they're anguished. And a mother holding a child in with that expression, saying, please help me, help me.
And what about the people who are not in your shelter? Because you can't shelter everybody. The people who are not in the shelters, is there a waiting list to get in?
We find ways to try to bring them into a shelter. And we work together with so many others that are so ready to provide care and service and feed them. And it takes a village to care for everybody.
Have you seen Ukrainians starting to arrive in Mexico at your shelter?
Yes, they're not in great numbers, though. It's a very few people from Ukraine, a couple of families every week, but not more than that.
Have you seen that the Ukrainians are being allowed to cross over, or are they in a similar situation as everybody else?
They're still at the border, hopeful to go in, but they also need to be proceeding with certain help from attorneys to help them enter the United States.
There's 100,000 parolees allowed into the United States from the Ukraine, but there's similar countries that maybe not at war, but also extraordinarily dangerous as well, that are not being allowed in. What do you think of the differential in treatment?
I think that every country is different, and the reason, especially like Ukraine, or you have Venezuela, you have other countries like Cuba, whose reality is very different, and the United States needs to proceed to respond differently in certain cases like those. But, I think that we must all consider all people, and people who are afraid, and people who need to be attended to correctly, definitely.
Your politicians come to the border. What's the number one thing you want a politician to know so that they can go back to Washington and make correct decisions?
They need to stay away from making this a political war and focus on coming together and finding solutions that address what we see at the border, not only just to protect our country, to see who enters our country, but also to create policies that respond to the humanity that we're dealing with and respond to both things, and not just create a barrier that tries to ignore what really is happening at the border.
Thank you very much for speaking with me, Sister Pimentel. You are an amazing, amazing woman, the work that you do to help people. And thank you for all of your colleagues as well for the work that they do as well.
Thank you, Brett.